Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Tetzel. I am a member of the Association of National Park Rangers, which is a group of individuals that have come together as a nonprofit organization to help support the profession of park rangering, if that's such a profession, and also support the mission of the National Park Service. Part of what the Association of National Park Rangers does is provide training opportunities not only for its members, but also for the public at large. So that's why we're here, as partnership with the Royal Caribbean. We put members on board from time to time, ships to help educate the public about what you're seeing out there last week or so. A little bit about me. If those of you who've been with me before, you know a little bit of my story. I was first started as a park ranger at San Antonio Missions National Historical Park in my hometown of San Antonio, Texas in 1989. So I've been doing this for quite a while. I joined ANPR not long after that. I've been a member for several decades. I'm excited to have this opportunity. I am a native Texan, and I know this is not Texas, this is Alaska. And I always have little quarrels with my coworkers up here in Alaska about really who's the biggest state. But we won't get in that today. They keep saying if you cut Alaska in half, Texas would be the third largest state. We'll see about that. But in any case, I have been now, as of this morning, to 244 of the 430 units of the National Park Service. Over my career, I left, I eventually moved on from being a park ranger and moved into facilities training, and that's what I've been doing for the last decade or so. So I've gotten to travel around to most of the parks, over half the parks in the system, including more than half of the parks in Alaska. So I learn a lot from my interactions with my friends and coworkers out there, and so hopefully we can pass some of that along to you today. I want to talk today about our last stop tomorrow. When we all get off the ship, you will get off the ship in beautiful Seward, Alaska. People ask me all the time when they find out I work for the National Park Service, what's your favorite park? That is the most difficult question you can ask. There's a lot of my favorites out there. My hometown park, San Antonio Missions, has got to be one of those favorite ones. But my wife and I, years ago, started this list of where we would work, where we would do like a detail for several months and things like that. Seward and Kenai Fjords National Park is on one of those lists, at least a detail. I don't know if we want to spend the whole winter here. But it's a beautiful area. Been there a couple times. We've got a good friend who's the chief of facilities at Kenai Fjords National Park. We actually visited with him a couple of years ago. Been all over it. So hopefully we can pass on some information about the stop tomorrow when you get off the boat, what you're going to be seeing, and encourage you to explore a little bit if you have a little bit of time after we get off the ship. So, the other day, the first day when we were on, I talked about the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, probably one of the largest conservation pieces of legislation that our country's ever had. Passed by Congress in November of 1980 and signed into law a week later by President Jimmy Carter. So he was leaving office. It set aside large areas of Alaska to be included in the national park system, the national forest system, and the national wildlife refuge. Kenai Fjords was one of those pieces of land set aside. In fact, here in section 201 of ANILCA, it talks about, it actually establishes Kenai Fjords as a national park. President Carter had set it aside 2 years earlier as a national monument. Congress in ANILCA said, okay, it is now a national park, and mainly there to help preserve the environmental integrity of one thing that most people don't think about when they think about Kenai Fjords is the Harding Icefield. So Harding Icefield, we'll get into this a lot more, really creates the whole landscape that you're going to be seeing when we pull into Seward tomorrow. This is one of those interesting parks. When NILCA was first happened, when National Interest Lands Conservation Act first happened, there were many, many skeptical Alaskans about whether they wanted this to actually go on. Seward, Alaska was one of those places that would almost tar and feather any Park Service people showing up down here because they did not want Kenai Fjords set aside as a national park. It's funny, if you've ever watched the Ken Burns special on the National Park Service, they interviewed the mayor of Seward at that time. And she talked about how she was dead set against having all these people come here, setting aside all this land, so as Kenai Fjords National Park, taking it out of the public domain, so to speak, and really dead set against it. Then a few years later, after they saw what all it would do, she's all for it. And so Kenai Fjords is one of those places where we had a little bit of touch and go whether the people here wanted it to happen, but once it happened, they're super excited about it. Like I said, it's all about the Harding Icefield. And here on this map, you can see all this area right in here is what's called the Harding Icefield. It's a little over 700 square miles. When you add the glaciers that come down off of the Harding Icefield, it gets up to a little over 1,100 square miles. So probably about 80% the size of Rhode Island, if you're thinking about it. So the Icefield sits on top of the mountain range, the Kenai Mountains in the area, and the glaciers, like I said, we include those in. It feeds down into these bays, into some of the river estuaries, lakes and things. It's all about ice, and we're going to talk a lot about ice today. There we go. But most people come here to see the wildlife, and hopefully, as we're pulling into Resurrection Day towards Seward tomorrow, we'll start seeing some of the wildlife. Here these sea lions are sitting at the edge of Resurrection Bay. Again, the ice is what brings the wildlife here. It provides water, provides nutrients and things like that. So Kenai Fjords, the park itself is mostly that ice field, but there's also this layer between, or this interim zone between the ice and the water, which is heavily forested. The water from that glacier provides water to help keep that forest zone going. And then, of course, the areas around the coast where you got a lot of marine wildlife. So you'll see a huge variety of wildlife in the park. In that forest zone on land, you get the larger mammals. You get bears, black bears, brown bears, even some smaller ones, marmots. If you get high enough up, it's fun to watch the marmots just scurry around all the meadows. So, those typical Alaskan animals that you think about, you're going to find in that forest zone between the ice field and the water. Actually, at the upper edges of that zone, when you start getting into ice, you're going to get some of the other animals. This mountain goat right here, my wife and I were hiking up the Harding Icefield trail one day, and all of a sudden this whole group of mountain goats comes down, and we're looking at each other like, what to do? Really cute little baby one too, kid goat there, but they eventually just sort of dispersed. We were able to get by them a little bit. Some of them went out, they live right here on the zone. We'll hike across the glaciers and the ice field to find new food sources and things like that, so it's really fun to watch them. And then the marine life. Captain just mentioned, or he talked about the whales that we saw going into Chatham Sound on the first day, once we were heading into Juneau. You'll see lots of whales, orcas, different types of dolphins, sea lions, seals, and sea otters. We've seen a sea otter out there actually eating an octopus lying on its back, so that's fun. This is a group of humpback whales right here, bubble net feeding. If you've ever seen that, it's really amazing to watch. What they do, and this is a learned behavior. They do not come about this instinctively. They teach each other how to do this, and it requires a lot of communication between the whales. So vocalizing between themselves, they set up a plan. They will start to circle a school of fish, so forth, and at some point, one or two of them will start blowing bubbles out their blowholes and create this bubble net that will confuse the fish or krill or whatever they have, and they will all gather within that bubble net. And then when everything is just right, they'll vocalize again, and all the whales just will swim up through the middle of that school of fish, feeding the whole way up. And it's, like I said, it's really an amazing thing to watch. Marine wildlife is plentiful in the whole Seward area in Kenai Fjords. So again, mountains, ice, and ocean, that's what all the park is about. Starting at some high peaks, that the Harding Icefield, all the way down through the glaciers into the oceans. The fjords themselves are glacially carved. We'll talk a lot about that coming up. So ice fields. People get confused what an ice field really is. And ice field, if you think about it as the lake of ice. It's sort of just sitting there like a lake of water. There's different types of ice areas, large areas of ice. There's an ice sheet. You may have heard about the ice sheets. There's really only two left in the world today: the Antarctica ice sheet and the Greenland ice sheet. So those are continental-wide ice areas that cover a continent or an island like Greenland. Just a little bit smaller than that is an ice cap. An ice cap is just like the name says, it caps whatever landform it's sitting on. So with an ice cap, you'll if it's sitting on top of a mountain, you won't see the mountain at all because it's going to cover the mountain. A lot of times they're dome-shaped, but they will cover whatever landform they have around. An ice field, however, is different in that it will not cover all of the land. The Harding Icefield is 1,000 feet thick, but it does not cover all of its land. And so you have these lonely peaks, or nonoptics, that's poke up out of the ice field. So you have like islands within that lake of ice. Ice fields also will then feed glaciers in most instances, and that's the river. So if you think of the ice field as a lake, the river coming out of the lake is the glacier itself. Glaciers come in many different forms. We'll talk about those in a minute, but this is where the ice starts flowing out of that lake of ice that's up in the ice field. While they do that, of course, glaciers just start gouging. They're great at carving new canyons and everything. This is the cyclic glacier coming off the Harding Icefield towards the top of the ice field. And so you can see how it just sort of flows down out of the mountain. We were at Hubbard Glacier earlier today. That ice started way up almost 18,000 feet, flows down off of the mountains into the Desperation Bay. And so always think about how the glaciers are going to flow. Glaciers are categorized by where they end, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But this glacier itself is cyclic glacier, winds up in cyclic lake, so it's an outflow glacier. It will flow into a lake someplace. When the glacier gets into a bay or gets down to the ocean, we call it a tidewater glacier, just like Hubbard Glacier that we saw today. This is Northwestern Fjord in Kenai Fjords. You can see the glacier coming down, it carved out the whole fjord or the whole bay. This part of what glaciers do is they will advance during ice ages and then retreat after the ice age is over. As those that are coming down to the ocean start to retreat, they leave these fjords or narrow bays throughout the area they're at. All along the coast of Alaska, the southern coast of Alaska, you will see fjords or narrow bays going in. And that's part of the glacier retreating back up, and you usually will find at the head of that bay or fjord an actual glacier. So, Kenai Fjords is where the Ice Age is still lingering around. You'll see all sorts of evidence of the glacial activity at Kenai Fjords. This is at Bear Glacier Point, just a little at the entrance to Resurrection Bay, where you will go up to get to Seward. All the carving that's going on here happened in the last Ice Age. So you'll see all the evidence of that going on. But it's also where the ice still is in effect and still taking over the landscape. So let's go back to the top of the mountain in the Harding Icefield. Like I said, this is one of the larger ice fields in the United States, a little bit smaller than the state of Rhode Island up there. And up on the Harding Icefield, 1,000 feet thick, it's just sort of sitting there, except when you get to some of these canyons, you can see the sort of outflows there. And that's where the glaciers come off. Harding Icefield spawns about 38 glaciers off of the sides of it. Most of them come down towards Seward. This one actually is headed back away from Seward. The Harding Icefield is then just the source of all this glacial rivers coming down from the highlands down towards the water, trying to find its way down to the lower elevations at sea level. And when you think about glaciers, you think about carving all the time. They're masters of carving as they go along. The immense weight of the glacier, you think of all that ice just sitting on top of the landscape, slowly moving as it moves down the mountainside. Just that weight alone is going to gouge out a lot of the landscape. It then will start picking up some of the rubble that's there, some of the larger boulders, other things to help sharpen its cut. And it keeps moving and keeps moving and moving, and it's carving the rock, carving canyons, carving fjords, carving anything in its path. And as you get to, as you walk around Kenai Fjords, you will see all the evidence around it. This is that exit glacier, the one that you can actually drive up to. And you see as you walk up towards the exit glacier trail, you see scrapes on just about every rock that you go by. Because that's where the glacier was carving for all those years. Like I said, glaciers are categorized about where they end up. And so we're going to look at 3 of the glaciers in the park to tell you about some of those different categories. Alley Glacier is a tidewater glacier, just like Hubbard Glacier that we left just a few hours ago. It starts up at the Harding Icefield, winds up in Ialic Bay, and this is one that you can easily get to on a boat tour if you want to. When you're at the glacier's edge, like I said, while we're at Hubbard Glacier, people are always wanting to watch and see if you have something, iceberg calve off of it. And we do watch them. This right here is an iceberg calving off by Alley Glacier. So that's always exciting to watch. You will create tidal waves coming off there. My friend Kurt is a surfer, and he actually surfs off of the calving glaciers when it comes out. They'll build big enough waves to do some surfing. But while we're all excited to see that the icebergs calve off of the glacier, really the excitement is underneath the water. First of all, usually you only see about half of the glacier above water, depending on where you're at, but lots of slice of ice lies below the water line as well. And from time to time, the glacier will calve something underwater and you will get something just pop to the surface. That's probably the most dangerous one because you're not expecting it. All of a sudden, a big piece of chunk of ice comes out of the water. It can tip over your kayak, your boat, whatever you're in, create waves just as big as the ones that come off when it falls off the front of the glacier terminus. That's exciting to see as well, but the part that's not so exciting to see, but just as important, is all the mixture going on underneath that glacier right down there. So the glacier, as it's coming down, of course, melts quite a bit. There's a lot of ice there, but it means some of it's going to melt and start running off. As it does, it picks up minerals and other stuff that's in the soil or in the rock that's in the glacier, underneath the glacier. A lot of that is called glacial flour. It makes the water change colors, but it's very nutrient heavy. So that fresh water, that cold fresh water coming into the bay hits the cold salt water, which increases the nutrient load, so to speak. And then you get tides and currents and the wind, mixing that all together, stirring it up. It's a perfect place for phytoplankton to start growing. And if you know anything about biology, I'm not a biologist, but you learn real quickly in biology that phytoplankton is at the very base of the food chain. Because you have that heavy concentration of phytoplankton in the fjords and bays around here, that's what brings in all the wildlife, the marine wildlife especially. But, so, you get the smaller fish feeding on the phytoplankton. Even some of the whales will feed on the phytoplankton. Other fish will come in, feed until you get to the top of the food chain. So it's because of the glaciers that you have so much wildlife in the bays and fjords of Kenai Fjords and all of South Alaska. A different glacier that we will talk about is Bear Glacier. And instead of ending in the ocean, this one ends in a lake. If you were in Juneau, if you went to see Mendenhall Glacier, that's similar to Bear Glacier. It comes down, doesn't make it all the way to the ocean, but it does into the lake, and so you get this pool of water. In this case, it's more of a lagoon, and all the glaciers, all the icebergs, as they can't float out to sea, just sort of accumulate right here. Bear Glacier is the longest glacier in Kenai Fjords National Park. It's about 10 miles from where you're seeing this picture right here up into the Harding Icefield. That's a pretty long route for a glacier to go. But it's very unique in that during the last at the end of the last ice age, as it moved back, as it retreated back, it left what is called a terminal moraine right at its edge. And that cut it off from the ocean, period. So moraines are big piles of rubble. You see these in the western United States all over the place, just big piles of rubble. A lateral moraine is one that sort of flows parallel with the glacier itself. So you can see these strips of dirt basically going up the glacier. But a terminal moraine is one that's right at the edge of the glacier. Think about the glacier pushing all this dirt and rock and everything with it as it moves down right at the front. In this case, as the glacier retreated after the last ice age, it left its big terminal moraine right there. This is Resurrection Bay, saltwater right here, and this is Bear Lagoon, which is freshwater right here. And right there is the terminal moraine dam that keeps the two apart. Really beautiful place to see. Again, because the iceberg cannot leave this lagoon, they just accumulate in there. Makes it really popular for the kayakers. If you want to take a boat down from Seward or hike a little bit, you can take your kayak down there and then just kayak all around the lagoon at Bear Glacier. It's really an interesting place to see. And then finally, there's glaciers that just end on land. This is Exit Glacier. It's the one the one place in the park that you can actually drive to. You don't have to take a boat or a plane to get to it. Exit Glacier gets its name from the fact that an expedition trying to explore the Harding Icefield up here was looking for a route down. They came upon Exit Glacier. This was their exit, so it's now Exit Glacier. Glaciers like this don't necessarily form a lagoon or lake in front of them once they start to retreat. Instead, they just have what they call an outwash plain. So here's Exit Glacier coming down, and this is the outwash coming off of the glacier. You'll see this all over Alaska, these braided rivers, wide areas with braids going throughout all the sediment right here. That's an outwash river. It's coming off it's the water coming off of the glacier. From time to time, small dams of ice will form at the toe of the glacier, and when those break, it will create a flood. They've had a couple here even this year at Exit Glacier, and that's why you get this broad outwash plain. They're really sort of impressive to see from the air. So here's the parking area at Exit Glacier, and here's the outwash plain coming from the glacier itself. The glacier is right about over here. As it goes further down, the outwash plain gets broader and broader. And so this is it coming down and adjoining the Resurrection River, which then flows down towards Resurrection Bay, right where Seward is, right where we'll get off the boat. We wouldn't be doing justice if we didn't talk about glaciers and climate change in the Harding Icefield. And Exit Glacier is probably one of the best places to see this. Notice this little sign right here. It says 2010. This is where Exit Glacier was in 2010. As you're driving in the road towards Exit Glacier, they put up signs to show you where the glacier was at various times, dating all the way back into the 1800s. And then as you get out of your car at the Exit Glacier parking lot, hike up a little bit, they continue those signs. So 2010 is when this happened here. My friend Kurt, when he started working at the park in 2010, he said you could stand at this point and actually touch the ice. That's where it was in 2010. 2022, let me go a little bit back a little bit further. So here you can see aerial views. In 1950, Exit Glacier was all the way down here. 1993 to here. In 2015, right in this area right here. So zoom in on that 2015 picture. This is the edge of the glacier, and put the dot. There's where 2010 was. So 2010, the ice was full all the way up to that dot. So it tells you how much Exit Glacier has retreated in the past 100 years or so. Earlier I mentioned, at the ends of Ice Age, it's very common for glaciers to retreat, leaving all these fjords, canyons, valleys, whatever in place. The problem right now, as we're seeing, is that glaciers are retreating at a faster pace than they really should, all because of climate change. And because as the average temperatures rise, more melting happens during the summer, and that means the glaciers will start pulling back further and further, and as the winter comes in and snow and ice starts to form again, it just cannot keep up with that cycle. So it keeps pulling back further and further. So just to help you understand, this is 2 years ago when we visited Exit Glacier. We're standing right where that 2010 sign was, and you can see the toe of the glacier way back up there. So what does this mean? Part of the problem with the glaciers is, first of all, it's a great source of fresh water. Part of the reason we have bears and elk and moose in this part of Alaska is because of the fresh water that all the glaciers provide. When you start losing those glaciers, you start losing that source of fresh water for the land mammals. In the ocean, it's just as bad, because remember the marine mammals all depend on the phytoplankton that comes from the mixing of the glacial water coming off the glacier with the seawater. And once you start losing those glaciers, it means the marine mammals are going to have a harder time going forward. So it's something the Park Service keeps monitoring. Like I said, those signs are really an obvious example of how climate change has caused Exit Glacier and the other glaciers within the park to start retreating. And very few places in the world do we have glaciers that are not seeing this. We just left one of those places where it is not affecting it right now. Hubbard Glacier, like I said this morning, is actually advancing from time to time. It's been stable for about 10 years, but experts believe that it may eventually advance again, close off Russell Fjord, make that into a freshwater lake, basically. So again, this is a great place to study climate change, to figure out what's going on with our climate. Exit Glacier is one of the great places to see that happen. All right, so last few minutes, I want to take the time. If you have some time, once we get to Seward, I want to encourage you to get out there and explore the park and explore the area surrounding Seward a lot. We'll come in through Resurrection Bay. Seward is at the head of the bay, so we'll get right up to the top of the bay right there. Resurrection Bay is a beautiful area as well. There's lots of boat tours. You can do kayaking, you can do everything. So get out and enjoy the park. There's 3 different ways to do this. By boat. There's several boat tours that will get you up into some of the fjords. This is Icefield Fjord, Icefield Bay, and the Icefield Glacier, which is one of the closer fjords to Resurrection Bay. So it's 4 to 6 hour trip by boat. There are also Northwestern Fjord, other fjords further down the coastline in the park. Those can do multi-day trips if you want to do that as well. But it's really an amazing place to see. You can see the sharp canyon-like fjords as we go up there. And again, when you get to the glacier, you see that calving action. It's exciting to see. And you can see lots of wildlife going there. And again, very dramatic scenery as you're out in a boat. And hopefully the weather will hold up tomorrow, as maybe if you get up early enough. I think the captain said we're going to get in at 6 a.m. Maybe you get up early enough, you'll see some of that dramatic scenery as we pull into Resurrection Bay. If you're into hiking, you can do this. You can explore Kenai Fjords by land. Like I mentioned, this exit glacier is approachable by car. You can drive in there. There's a nature center there and several hiking trails. The exit glacier trail will take you right up to the toe of the glacier, so you can actually see the terminus of the glacier. From there is the Harding Icefield trail. I think we might try to do this weekend as we're there. It will take you up and follows exit glacier all the way up to the top of the glacier where it meets Harding Icefield. It's a spectacular trail. There's about halfway up, there's this beautiful set of meadows with braiding water coming all around from other ice along the side of the mountain. When we were up there, we watched the marmots scamper around. It's a lot of fun to watch. And then, of course, around this area is where we started meeting the mountain goats, which you want to be careful with, but they were cute. It was cute to see the little ones. There he is. And then finally, if you really wanted to get into the park, you can go by air. Seward has a little airport. We were lucky enough 2 years ago to get into this one. We thought we were going to be able to land on the Harding Icefield, but the cloud cover was such that we could not touch down. But just flying over it is impressive. Like I said, it reminds you of a lake with all these mountains coming out of it. The Harding Icefield is this huge expanse. You fly up Icefield Glacier, like right here, fly up the ravine. It's really gorgeous to see. And then get up to the top, fly around the ice field, see some of the other glaciers coming off, being spawned off of it. In our case, we flew down Exit Glacier right back into Seward. It's a really cool way to see the park. So, with that, hope you get a chance to see at least a little bit of the park. If not, if you're headed out right away, you're going to enjoy the beauty of Seward. The highway that heads up to Anchorage, the train as it heads up to Anchorage is following some of those same canyons. There is no glacier at the edge of Resurrection Bay anymore. That's basically was Exit Glacier, so you won't see a glacier as you pull out of Seward, but you will see a lot of the glacial action and the evidence of what the glaciers have done over the eons going forth. So, hope that gives you a little taste of what's going on. Thank you very much. It's been fun being with you on this cruise, and I'll be around for a little bit. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them for you. Other than that, have a great evening, and hopefully see you tomorrow on land and Seward.